All right. So the big news of the week so far is Erik Karlsson is finally a Pittsburgh Penguin. I read your notes yesterday, Scotty, on your website. No brainer, right? This was the easy thing to do.
Well, I mean, it's yeah, sure. And if you're Kyle Dubas, well, what have you got to lose? In fact, it's I know in Pittsburgh he's already being lauded as a magician, and as much for bringing in a generational player in Erik Karlsson and a surefire Hall of Famer. But there's as much credit for disposing of unwanted assets in salary cap dead weight, and what Michael Granlund and Jeff Petrie goes back to Montreal, and really it only cost him a protected first round pick and a second round pick in 25. So there's not, and they got to pay him $10 million a year through 27. I guess for me, I don't know. Okay, didn't you already have a right-handed guy who puts up lots of points and maybe needs a real good, strong defensive partner in Chris Letang, whom you extended a year ago? But anyway, bring in Erik Karlsson, coming off a generational year. And I don't know, like, they're sure a better team than they were yesterday, but I don't know if they are they exponentially closer to being a playoff team after missing last year for the first time since 05-06? I would argue probably not, but whatever. It's a great story for Pittsburgh. People come and watch. Carlson's worth the price of admission. Got to be some regression, I would think, point wise. And he really, he's not a defensive defenseman, and he is what he is, right? He's a great player. And we'll see what happens. Eastern Conference is a bear, and still to me have a massive question in goal, because Kyle Dubas is, in spite of coming in and sort of shaking things up, still Tristan Jarry in goal. Casey DeSmith goes out the door as part of this deal, but your goaltending is still C+, B-. Again, are you any closer to a playoff spot than you were 24 hours ago? Probably, but it's not a gimme for this team to be in the playoffs. And what happens if you miss 2 times in a row now? New ownership, the Fenway Sports Group, like what happens? You've already extended Malkin and Letang. You now have Carlson in at $10 million a year through 27. And if you miss the playoffs for a second straight year, I don't know, what is the plan if you don't make the playoffs? I'm just curious.
It's a great story, but like a beautiful looking lake with the water calm, and in the little inlet, there's some layers to it. And at the top, what you see is really good. Erik Karlsson going to Pittsburgh, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang get one more big run at it. You bring in some star power, and Karlsson going back to Pittsburgh, the site of one of his most epic moments with the cut of the Achilles heel, and he joins that team after everything that came out from that. And who knows?
Listen, the late owner did a forensic audit.
He did. He did a forensic audit. Who knows what would have happened with Erik Karlsson had that injury not happened? It might have been one of the greatest defensemen in NHL history, surpassing all others. He was that good at that time. So this is a beautiful, wonderful story. But below the surface, you've got the fact that you replaced the same player that you already have, which Scott mentioned. I don't remember a team winning with 2 of those same types of defensemen before. The other part is, did you address any of your shortcomings at all, other than dispatching some players that weren't producing? You got rid of them, but you didn't replace them with any of the same type of talents and abilities. So I'm a skeptic on the overall possibilities, but I will be one of those people that will be watching Pittsburgh every chance I get because of the storyline. So it's a win, but a wait and see.
Well, you know what, Scotty, to your point about, Letang and Carlson being the same position. Well, we got 48 minutes covered now.
Yes,
so I was trying to think about, are you what's the power play going to look like? Because do you want to put both of those 2 guys like they put Draisaitl and McDavid on the ice in Edmonton. Do you want to put Letang and Carlson on the number one power play together and see if they can work together and somehow, some way? And then you can say, well, at least we got two defensemen out there, because the problem last year, and you guys kind of addressed it, was that this was a team of Sid Crosby, Jake Gensel, Evgeny Malkin when he was healthy, Christopher Letang, and then some mediocre goaltending. And it didn't get them to the playoffs. Are they that much different? Is really the question now. Kyle, listen, give Kyle credit. He went in. He needed to make a splash. He made a splash. He did. He made a big splash. But last week, people were ripping him for assigning himself a new job. So it's been an interesting time in Pittsburgh for Kyle Dubas.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you do with like if you have the top, if you're a top 5 power play in Pittsburgh, and maybe, do you move Letang? Does he play on the wall? Does he, I know Kyle Dubas said yesterday that Jake Gensel won't miss as much time as initially feared, but he'll miss some time at the start of the season. You can put them both out there. You can move, push one of them to a, quasi forward or rover spot, whatever you want to do. But you're going to have, the issue is still the same. You can't look. Erik Karlsson is going to play about 85% of every power play. So is there room for Chris Letang to play somewhere given that? I don't know. Maybe there is. Mike Sullivan's a really good coach, won back-to-back cups there. I'm sure he's had, and we know that he has had a very strong voice in everything that has happened in Pittsburgh over the last couple of years. He is a presence there. So, Kyle Dubas didn't call Mike Sullivan on Sunday afternoon and say, "Oh, by the way, I got a surprise for you." He knew what was in the works, so he must be comfortable with it. They'll have to figure it out. The lineup's going to look a lot different, and there was a lot of criticism of the bottom 6 a year ago and what was its identity, and there was a lot of haranguing about what happened with Ron Hextall as a GM there, and there have been some changes. Again, I don't know whether it's a matter of have you addressed the concerns of the bottom 6 so that they can produce and take some of the pressure off the top group, top 6, or have you just shuffled is it just same result, different names on the back of the jerseys? That's the challenge, once the season gets going. But again, in the Eastern Conference, there is the competition for playoff spots is going to be unbelievable. I think you can lock in 6 teams right now. And let's do it. Carolina, Rangers, New Jersey, Toronto, Tampa. I put Florida in there if you want. Went to a final. Why not? So there's 6 teams. There's 2 spots left.
Hold on. You put Florida ahead of Boston?
I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize. But
I don't know where that team is at. So, okay, if you put Boston in, there's 7 teams.
Yeah.
Or if you put Boston and take Florida out, there's 6. You got 2 spots, maybe 1 for 8 teams. Like, where does Pittsburgh fit with Washington, Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo? Columbus is going to be way better. They just are. Like outside of Philly and Montreal, I think every team in the East is like, we should be playing meaningful games in February and March, and Pittsburgh is in that same group. Like, I don't know. And then I go back to the same question. What happens if you miss 2 years in a row?
You're not firing the new president and general manager.
Well, no, obviously not. But if you're ownership, are you like, well, what are we doing here? And really, if you're, now you're, like, what happens as you get closer and closer to the end of, where Sidney Crosby is at? Like, is he sticking around?
But don't you think that's where they are now? I mean, isn't this one last gasp for 87?
Well,
last gasp for Malkin?
I'm just looking here. So is it a last, Crosby's deal is up at the end of 24, 25.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Sidney Crosby can do whatever he wants, and the Penguins are, no one's going to be forcing Sid out. But at the same point, he's 36 years old. If they miss the playoffs again this year, what do you owe? Let me put it this way: what do you owe Sidney Crosby if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins and you rolled the dice for his entire career, reloading every year, and you miss again, and the team is the prospects are grisly. What do you owe him? I think you owe him. Where do you want to stay, or do you want to go somewhere and have a run? Do a Ray Bork. I don't know, but I think you have to have those questions at the end of this year if you miss 2 years in a row.